It's 2005. The internet is a wild frontier. A fuzzy JPEG of your band's logo, a personalized top 8 friends list, a custom background with blinking GIFs. This was social media. This was MySpace. But how did we go from designing our digital rooms to endless algorithmically curated feeds? How has online connection evolved over 2 decades? Join us on a whirlwind tour from MySpace to TikTok, 20 years of social media. We're exploring the platforms that shaped a generation, the trends that defined our digital lives, and the enduring human desire to connect. If your first profile pic was taken with a digital camera hit like, if your For You page knows you better than your actual family, subscribe to GENSHIFT. Let's scroll through history. The Wild West of Web, 2.0 MySpace and early connections 2003 to 2008. The story of social media as we know it doesn't begin with a clean minimalist interface. It begins with glorious, unapologetic chaos. This was the era of digital homesteading, and its capital was MySpace. Launched in 2003, it wasn't just a website. It was the first plot of digital land a generation of millennials could call their own. It was our digital bedroom, a messy, creative, and deeply personal space where we built our first public-facing identities from scratch. For any millennial who came of age in the mid-2000s, the experience was visceral. We weren't just users. We were amateur web designers spending hours learning basic HTML and CSS, not for a class, but for a cause to make our profile perfectly. We'd hunt for the right code to create a glitter text headline, to install a custom cursor, or to embed a music player that would blast the defining emo anthem of the week. The profile was a canvas, and our identity was the art. It was a collage of our favorite bands, our rawest teenage poetry in the About Me section, and our social status broadcast for all to see. And nothing broadcast that status more clearly than the iconic and often infamous Top 8. This simple grid of your closest friends was a public declaration of your social hierarchy, a digital soap opera that created and crushed friendships in real time. This public performance of friendship was a core part of what researcher Dana Boyd calls writing community into being. We were defining our social circles not in private, but on a public stage. This era was fueled by the rise of home broadband, making media-rich, auto-playing profiles possible on our desktop computers. Psychologically, MySpace tapped directly into the adolescent need for identity exploration and peer validation. As scholars have noted, it was a space for doing identity work, for trying on different versions of ourselves to see which ones would stick. MySpace was also a cultural kingmaker, especially for music. It democratized the industry, allowing bands like the Arctic Monkeys and artists like Colby Kaya to bypass traditional gatekeepers and build a global fan base directly from their profile pages. Your profile song wasn't just a background track, it was a statement of who you were. But its chaotic freedom was also its undoing. After its $580 million acquisition by News Corporation in 2005, the focus shifted from user experience to aggressive monetization. The site became bloated with intrusive ads, slow and buggy. As its millennial users started looking towards college and the professional world, the glitter and chaos began to feel juvenile. This migration wasn't just about features. As Dana Boyd's research highlights, it was also a form of digital white flight, where Facebook's perceived exclusivity and cleanliness attracted a more affluent, college-bound demographic, leaving MySpace feeling like a digital ghetto. MySpace peaked in 2008 with nearly 76 million monthly visitors, but the exodus was already underway. The era of social domination, Facebook and the network effect, 2007 to 2012. If MySpace was the digital bedroom, Facebook was the digital town square, clean, organized, and open to everyone. After opening to the public in 2006, Facebook's rise marked the true mainstreaming of social media. The platform's thesis was a radical departure from MySpace. It wasn't about creative expression, but about mapping your real-world social connections onto a uniform, centralized grid. It was less about who you wanted to be and more about who you already were. The user experience was a culture shock. Gone were the anonymous usernames and flashy backgrounds. Here you used your real name. The primary activity wasn't decorating, but searching, finding every classmate from high school, every friend from college, every distant cousin. The friend request became a core social ritual, and the wall was the new public forum for conversation. We learned to poke each other a weirdly ambiguous digital nudge, and we were introduced to the revolutionary and sometimes terrifying feature of photo tagging. The most profound innovation, however, was the newsfeed. Introduced in September 2006 to a storm of controversy, it fundamentally rewired social media. It shifted the experience from an active pull model, where you had to visit individual profiles to see updates, to a passive push model, where a never-ending stream of information was delivered directly to you. This was the birth of the infinite scroll. Facebook's dominance was cemented by two forces. First, the smartphone revolution. Its mobile app made the platform ubiquitous, a constant companion in our pockets. Second, and most importantly, was the network effect. As scholars point out, the value of Facebook grew exponentially with each new user. You had to be on Facebook because all your friends were already there, creating a gravitational pull that competitors couldn't escape. The introduction of the like button in 2009 was a masterstroke, providing a frictionless form of social validation, what psychologists call virtual empathy, that also served as a powerful data signal for the algorithm. Facebook normalized sharing the mundane details of our lives. Identity was no longer defined by what you created, but by who you knew, what events you attended, and what you liked. It centralized our digital social lives, but it also marked the beginning of our collective privacy awakening. The platform's permissive data policies in this era laid the groundwork for future scandals like Cambridge Analytica. As Facebook grew from 58 million users in 2007 to over 1 billion by 2012, it became the undisputed giant. But its ubiquity became a weakness. The arrival of parents, bosses, and grandparents created what Dana Boyd termed context, collapsed the flattening of our multiple social circles into a single sanitized audience, forcing us to perform a bland, universally acceptable version of ourselves. The town square had become too crowded, and a new generation was looking for a different kind of space. The visual revolution, Instagram, and the rise of the selfie, 2010 to 2015. The next great tectonic shift in social media was driven by a piece of technology that was now in everyone's pocket: a high-quality smartphone camera. Launched in October 2010, Instagram was a mobile-first platform that understood a fundamental truth: a picture is worth 1,000 words, and with the right filter, it could be worth 1,000 likes. This era was defined by the pursuit of the perfect aesthetic, the explosion of the selfie, and the birth of the modern influencer. For early users, the experience felt like magic. With a single tap, a mundane photo of your lunch could be transformed into a work of art with the X Pro 2 or Lo-Fi filter. This wasn't just photo editing, it was mood creation, and it made everyone feel like an artist. This visual-first approach perfectly coincided with the rise of the front-facing camera popularized by the iPhone 4 in 2010. While self-portraits are as old as photography itself, this combination created the selfie as a dominant cultural language, a new immediate way to perform and communicate identity. The platform's iconic square grid encouraged users to build a highlight reel of their lives. Your profile was no longer a chaotic bedroom wall or a chronological timeline. It was a carefully curated art gallery. Every post mattered. This was the peak of performative perfection, a culture of aspirational living where every moment was a potential post. Instagram's founders brilliantly married art and technology to hook us on visual storytelling. This vision was so powerful that Facebook acquired the 13-person company for a staggering $1 billion in 2012 when it had just 30 million users. By 2015, that number had surged to 370 million. Instagram's rise gave birth to an entirely new industry: influencer marketing. These weren't traditional celebrities, they were relatable people who built massive followings by showcasing a desirable lifestyle, from fashion to travel to fitness. Brands quickly realized that a post from an influencer could be more powerful than a primetime TV ad. Identity was no longer just about who you knew, it was about the aesthetic you projected. But this pressure to present a flawless life came at a cost, with studies linking heavy Instagram use to increased anxiety, social comparison, and body image issues, a phenomenon sometimes called filter dysmorphia, where users feel disconnected from their unedited selves. The polished perfection of the Instagram feed, however, created a cultural vacuum. The relentless pressure to be perfect sparked a craving for the opposite content that was raw, unscripted, and most importantly, temporary. We've scrolled through a decade of digital memories, but what was your first social media obsession? Was it a custom MySpace profile or your first perfectly filtered Instagram post? Drop your first online love in the comments. We want to know your internet origin story. The ephemeral and the short-form Snapchat, Vine, and early Gen Z, 2013 to 2017. This next era was a direct rebellion against the curated permanence of the Instagram grid. Led by two groundbreaking apps, Snapchat and Vine, the focus of social connection pivoted dramatically. Content became fleeting, communication became authentic, and comedy became lightning fast. This was the moment that early Gen Z, the first true digital natives, found their voice, favoring raw, in-the-moment sharing over millennial perfectionism. Snapchat, which launched in 2011, offered liberation in the form of a disappearing message. The psychological genius of ephemeral content was that it lowered the stakes of sharing. You could send a goofy, unflattering selfie because you knew it would vanish in seconds. This fostered a more intimate, playful form of communication built around a small circle of close friends. The introduction of Stories in 2013 compiled these fleeting moments into a 24-hour narrative, brilliantly leveraging the fear of missing out, or FOMO. You had to watch now or you'd miss it forever. Meanwhile, Vine, launched in 2013, presented a different kind of revolution, radical creative constraint. Its strict 6-second looping video format forced a new kind of comedic grammar. It became the birthplace of a unique, rapid-fire humor that defined mid-2010s internet culture. It was here that Gen Z's distinct, often absurd and unpolished sense of humor was forged. Together, these platforms cemented the dominance of vertical video. They were built for the phone held vertically, and they made this once amateur format the new professional standard. For the first time, digital identity became bifurcated. You had your polished, permanent self on Instagram, and your goofy, authentic, temporary self on Snapchat. Connection was less about life achievements and more about sharing immediate experiences. But this era was as fleeting as the content it championed. Vine, despite having over 200 million users at its peak, was shut down by its parent company Twitter in 2017. Its fatal flaw was a failure to build monetization tools for its creators who fled to other platforms. And Snapchat, which had grown to 178 million daily users by 2017, saw its momentum blunted when Instagram shamelessly copied its signature stories feature in 2016, leveraging its massive existing user base to absorb the trend. A power vacuum was created. The world was primed for a new king of short-form video, one that could combine Vine's creativity with Snapchat's engagement and, crucially, a path to profit. The algorithmic reign TikTok and Gen Z's viral culture 2018 present. The current era of social media is defined by one force above all others, the algorithm. TikTok, which exploded globally after its 2018 merger with Musical.ly, represents the most significant paradigm shift since the Facebook newsfeed. It moved the center of gravity from the social graph, the network of people you choose to follow, to the content graph, a universe of videos selected for you by an uncannily intelligent AI. This is the era of algorithmic discovery, democratized creativity, and the perfection of the passive consumption feedback loop. The user experience is unlike anything that came before. The For You page, or FYP, is a personalized reality tunnel. It learns your niche interests with terrifying speed, serving up an endless, perfectly tailored stream of content. You don't curate the feed curates you. This creates powerful, self-reinforcing communities from #booktalk to #cleantalk, where users feel deeply understood because the algorithm gets them. A key innovation is the centrality of audio. Trending sounds are the genetic building blocks of memes and challenges, creating a shared cultural language that is often more important than the visuals themselves. For Gen Z, TikTok is not just an app, it's their native cultural ecosystem. A 2023 Pew Research study found that 52% of TikTok users get news there, a figure that has skyrocketed from just 22% in 2020. They use it as a search engine, a trend spotter, and a primary forum for social discourse. The platform's success is driven by its sophisticated recommendation engine, which weighs signals like watch time, shares, and comments to create a highly addictive dopamine loop that keeps users scrolling for, on average, nearly an hour a day. But its most profound cultural impact is the democratization of content creation. Because the algorithm prioritizes engaging content over a creator's follower count, anyone can go viral. This has redefined fame, making it more accessible, but also more ephemeral, and has given rise to a robust creator economy valued at over $250 billion. TikTok's influence on the music industry is absolute. Songs become global hits based on their virality as 15-second clips, forcing the entire industry to adapt. On TikTok, your identity is less about what you consciously project and more about what the algorithm reflects back at you. It is the most personalized, yet paradoxically, the most passive social media experience to date. And this power has come with immense controversy, from concerns over data privacy and its Chinese ownership to its impact on youth mental health and the spread of misinformation. From 133 million users in 2018, TikTok has surged to over 1.9 billion in 2024, cementing its place as the defining platform of this generation. Conclusion. Our journey from 2005 to today reveals a dramatic evolution. We went from meticulously customizing our digital bedrooms on MySpace to connecting our real-world social graph on Facebook. Then we learned to curate the perfect visual life on Instagram, played with sharing fleeting moments on Snapchat and Vine, and finally found ourselves endlessly watching a universe tailored just for us by the TikTok algorithm. The user has shifted from an active architect to a passive audience member. But beneath the changing interfaces and shifting technologies, one algorithm has remained constant: the human one. Each platform, each era was a response to a fundamental human need: the need to build an identity, to perform for our peers, to seek validation, to find our community, and to feel connected. As media theorist Nancy Baim has studied, technology doesn't create these needs. It provides new arenas for them to play out. From designing a top 8 to swiping through a For You page, the fundamental drive has always been to share our stories and belong. Every generation has its social media childhood, a digital environment that shapes its identity and its view of the world. And as we look toward what comes after TikTok, perhaps a move toward more private communities or AI-driven companionship, one thing is certain: our timeless quest for connection will continue to drive the next revolution. If this journey through digital history brought back memories, like and subscribe, and tell us what was the very first social media platform you ever used. Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to share this with someone who still thinks Facebook is just for old people.